Okay, what'd you come up with? What is a good reason for media, mass media? Anybody? Go ahead. Very good. It's a very effective way to spread information. Anybody else? Very good. It's a way of communicating long distances. If you think about it, our technology today makes the world smaller, as in someone around the world is right next door in a way. Think about 1,000 years ago. How did anybody in the United States, well, it didn't exist 1,000 years ago, so that's bad. How did any message go from the king to his men that are hundreds of miles away in Europe? Exactly. Physically, it had to be a physical object. My sister-in-law right now is in Thailand. I could contact her right now, instantly, just like that, as if she were right next to me, which 1,000 years ago, the only way that were possible is if you were right next to her. Very good. So it is a way of binding us together. Any other good reason for media? Yes, I know. That's what I'm asking. You're phrasing propaganda as a good thing. Yes, and I would actually agree with you. What is the good reason for propaganda? Propaganda is when an entity of power gets you to think the way they want you to think. Can you think of a way that is a healthy thing? Yeah, sure.
It spreads positivity.
It's a way of saying we're right. Propaganda is what convinced the American people, hey, we should get involved in World War II. That was propaganda. Propaganda is usually phrased as a bad thing, but it can just as easily be a healthy thing. Very good. Anybody else? Let me suggest a couple ideas that are here. One thing it does is it makes us all, in quotes, there. We're all there. December 7th, 1941, the Japanese Empire, a day that will live in infamy. And December 7th, 1941. How did Americans find out about what happened at Pearl Harbor? The radio. We were all there. I watched this live. I happened to not be in school that day. Beautiful September day. I had broken my wrist. Back then, I was the wrestling coach. And I was having a particularly grumpy day, so I was going to take it out on the kid that I was wrestling that day. And I launched him, nice little lateral drop, and he landed right on my wrist. And it kind of stung. But I made a big mistake. By the way, little lesson here for you. When you get injured at work, fill out the paperwork now. Fill it out now. I didn't, and I ended up paying for that myself. I had to pay for my broken wrist myself. Okay. Anyway, I was in a cast from here to here. If you want to know the story, I went to the doctor and he said, you got nothing to worry about. As long as you didn't break this one bone, nothing to worry about. That's the bone I broke. It's about this big and it's right there. And for a bone that's that big, I had to wear a cast from here to here for several months. So I wasn't in school that day because I got a new cast. And then I turned on the TV and watched this live. And I watched it live, and millions of other people watched it live. We were all there. We all experienced this at the same time. I mean, in real time, we experienced it. Thank you, mass media, for allowing that experience. I'm not saying thank you for 9/11. Thanks to mass media, we were able to experience something traumatic or wonderful. We all watched the Brewers win. That was sweet. They play again tonight. No. Cubs have to play tonight. Hey, very good. Second thing that I'm suggesting that functionalists say is it provides for a venue for disagreement. It is healthy to be able to voice one's opinion. Where it gets a little bit off track is when you decide, I disagree with your views, so I'm going to get in my car and run over you. Like what happened in Charlottesville about a year ago. But there's nothing wrong with being able to disagree via media with each other as long as we're doing it in an agreeable way. The third one, how many of you are fans of any of those TV shows where it's a lawyer and they're putting people in jail? There's like 8 of them. They're all the same show, but they're in different places. SUV. Yes, SVU. SVU, that's the one, right? any of those cop shows. Allow me to clarify this just a little bit. Do you know why executions were public until fairly recently? Yeah, it's so that you could take little Johnny and say, all right, Johnny, if you don't shape up, this is you. And then they did it, and Johnny was forever altered because of what he just saw there. Supposedly, it's a way of deterring crime. Okay? One of the arguments is as long as we're going to have a death penalty, it might as well be public. The point is to deter the rest of the public from engaging in that behavior. Well, that's one thing media can do. It can show you the reality of prison life. And then you think, gee, I don't want that to happen to me. I'll toe the line. Okay, thanks, media. Any questions on this slide? Of course there are. Let's keep going. This is just sort of an interesting chart. You have to compare what was true 4 years ago to what was true today, and something that's called market share. Don't write anything down yet. Just relax. Just try and understand what this is showing you. Do you know why you bought those Nikes? Do you know why you buy the brand of jeans that you do? Why? Okay, now she just made an argument because they're good products. And that might be true. Any other? What does that have to do with media? What I'm saying is, according to media, what does media have to do with it? Yes? Advertising. Yes, advertising. You buy a product because that company does a really good job of making you think you need the product. What version of the Apple phone are we on now? 10. Okay. When I grew up, we had one phone. It was this giant yellow thing. It had a cord, and no one owned phones back then. You rented a phone. Why would you buy a phone? Everyone rented, and we had a party line. So I had to pick up the phone and listen and see if somebody else was on the line. Nope, it's clear now. And then I would dial. And I like to listen in sometimes on the party line. But Apple is very effective at making you think you need the next Apple. Or whatever. Okay. So the big idea here is, is that media promotes consumption. It's also known as conspicuous consumption. I need the next car to replace my previous car because the next car is 1 year newer. I need the next iPhone. I need the next pair of shoes. What's wrong with your old phone? Nothing, but it's not the latest phone. I must get the latest phone, says the American media commercials. Okay. If you want to know, the biggest market share goes into retail, that's clothing. And then we've got food and beverages, beer commercials, beauty, entertainment, that sort of thing. Anyway, just understand what consumption is. If media promotes consumption. Consumption is the buying of things. Right? Not too much on this slide. So I'm introducing a new term here. There it is. It's something that's called media dysfunction. What's wrong with media? Now, before I tell you what's on the slide here, what's wrong with media? What's wrong with getting all your information from the TV or the internet or the radio or some web? What's wrong with that? Can you expound a little bit? Very good. So you're getting a filtered version of what's going on. Any other thoughts here?
Because everyone can share their ideas. You don't know what's right and you don't know what's wrong because everyone's just speaking their mind. Everyone's disputing things. It's
very good.
Too much.
The conspiracy theories that are out there. During the 2016 election, there was a theory that was widely believed by some people that Hillary Clinton was running a child sex shop in the basement of a pizzeria. And so one guy that believed it, he actually did this. He got his car, he found where that pizzeria was, and he crashed through it to save those kids. Of course they weren't there. She found out beforehand. Exactly. Right. And if you would believe several media outlets today, Trump is a neo-Nazi who will eliminate all immigrants. And when you point out to these news outlets some positive things about President Trump, like, for example, yesterday was a good day for the president. And whether if you don't like the guy, you're going to have to do some spin to maybe explain how, well, that's still a bad thing. The U.S. signed an agreement with Canada and Mexico for basically expanding trade between the three countries. I'm sorry, but that's a good thing. Sorry to those of you who can't stand Trump and, yeah, but he didn't do it. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. But there's spin. There's spin that's involved, whether it's Trump can't do any wrong or Trump is a near maniacal Nazi lovely Hitler. I love it. This is a pie chart that measures stories during the 2016 election, and Trump is a media giant. There were stories about him. I mean, think about it. When he takes his little phone out and presses some buttons, that becomes the lead story. The fact that he takes his little device out and makes some words on a page becomes the lead story. It's like they're obsessed with him, right? Any questions on this? Okay. I am going to shift gears violently. We are going to finish our paper. I'm going to make it a thing that you can now do. So you need to get out anything that has to do with your paper. Yeah. And let's finish this and assign it so that you can be done with it. Am I correct? We are now on paragraph 6.
Yeah.
Very good.
I couldn't find my pencil.
I am giving you an example that you are free to mooch off of me. That's great. And it's the first part of the 6 paragraphs. 6 paragraphs where you're wrapping it up. So just make sure, again, that the first 5 paragraphs are in the correct order. You have an intro. The next 2 paragraphs are presenting the side of the argument that you disagree with. Paragraphs 4 and 5 are presenting the side of the argument you agree with. So if you think the word should be removed, you first present the argument that they should not be removed, which you disprove with some specific evidence. And then you prove why they should not be removed. Okay? Did I say that right? Yeah. Okay. Let's end it. We are now writing paragraph number 6. You are free to use this series of sentences as your first couple sentences of the 6th paragraph. And what it's doing is it's presenting the big picture. For those of you who were in CIS previously, it's the throughout history, ... Throughout history, what? Well, here, throughout history, America is the land of freedom, democracy, and tolerance. We have more denominations than any other nation on earth. Denominations means religious affiliated institutions. But should religious words be in an oath said daily in public schools all over the country? ? You can use that word for word. Now, if you are a gifted writer and you would like to write your own big picture series of contextual sentences, be my guest. That would be very impressive. But you don't have to. You will have to for the next paper. You will write your own paper for second quarter. But if you want to do a little less thinking, and what's wrong with doing a little less thinking? Just write those words down. And by the way, I see several of you getting your phones out, take a picture. Great. Super duper. It is on the website as well. So if you don't want to get your phone, that's fine. All you then need to do after this contextual part is basically rewrite your first paragraph. Just list the 2 arguments for the side you disagree with, but this time do it in 1 sentence. List the 2 arguments for the side you agree with, but this time do it in another single sentence. And then rewrite your thesis word for word. And you're done. If you don't know where your thesis is, it's in your first paragraph, last sentence. That's your thesis. How many of you stood up and said the pledge today? You know, it was written in response to the Civil War, right? That we are one nation, not two. That we are not divisible. In other words, you cannot secede. And then they added the words under God in the 1950s.
Oh, we can't do
Texas, California. What you got to say about that? Okay. Does California want to secede? Some people, California. I've heard that there's a move. There was a move to create a new state called Northern California. They wouldn't secede from the Union, but they would secede from California.
Oh, okay.
They're gonna laser themselves.
They're gonna each grab a shovel and separate. I want you to finish this written-wise so that I can task you with this paper. What are you supposed to do with all this rough draft stuff? You're right. I'm curious how many of you, anticipating that I would have you type this bad boy, are ahead of the game and have already sort of typed it. 1, 2. Okay, 3. Okay. Exactly correct. You are tasked with typing this. You got to type all 6 paragraphs in the correct order. Like, look at when you labeled it third paragraph, make sure it's your third paragraph. So all 6 paragraphs typed. This time the quotes are in their entirety. I'm not saying put the whole document. I'm saying put every word of the part of the document you're quoting from in the typed version. And then there are many ways to get it to me. You can physically print the thing and give it to me. You can submit it via email. Email it to me. Great. I'll make a place on Google Classroom where you can submit it if you want. Awesome. Let's stick with those 3. So either physically give it to me, a physical copy, single spaced is fine, double-sided. If you reach more than a page, fine, that doesn't bother me. Or email it to me, or submit it on Google Classroom. Any of those would be fine. Now, when is a fair date for this to be due? Today is October the 2nd. I realize this week is insanity, but then next week starts normal again. It is your first quarter paper. You will have a second paper, second quarter.
Like Thursday.
What? This class is over after semester. Never? Nope. Would next Friday be? Do we have class Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah. Next Friday. A week from this Friday. Friday. We're going with Friday. Next Friday. A week from this Friday, it's due. So that would be the 12th.
12, yeah.
October 12th. A typed version of your undergrad paper is due. October 12th. That's a Friday.
That's so much time.
Good. Okay, for you, it's due Monday.
Okay, deal.
If you want to do sooner, fine. It's due for you sooner. It's due whenever you say it's due. Fine. Yes. Uh-huh. It's due whenever you say. But
As long as whenever you say it's before Friday.
I'll put it this way. It goes in the grade book a week from Friday. If you don't hand it in until after that, you'll still get credit. There's no late work in here. but it'll be a 0 until then. Okay, we understand. Any other questions about this bad boy? Super. Look what time it is. We have plenty of time to do presentations. They're happening. Yes, dear.
Just a question about Google Classroom. Is it possible to block people from commenting? Because if so, you should do that to Will.
Yeah.
He's commented like 25 times.
It's amazing. What?
And he has comments himself.
Well,
Yeah.
can I respond? I don't know. Is it?
I have no idea.
I don't know either.
They're trying to remove
Can I
it from
make your
comments.
stupid comments not visible anymore?
Why does anybody care?
I don't know.
Why do you care?
I'll tell you this. If I can, I will.
I was considering a whole story. There was going to be a story. If you read them, then you would get the content.
Oh boy.
I want to stay.
Let's vote. Let's have a survey on Google Classroom if they should stay or not.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
I'm not gonna.
Oh, yep. I need to.
Create a survey.
If you've not turned it in, will you please do so? Turn it into Google Classroom. I see 9 of us have. That's awesome. But everyone else, please go ahead.
I did it on the wrong email, and it won't let me submit it.
Okay, so this is what you need to do. You need to email it to yourself and then make a copy and then send that copy to Classroom.
Okay.
Or if you're up today, just log me out and log you in. It's not a big deal.
You said the thesis was your last sentence.
Right.
Are we going by like the number?
Potter, you said that the thesis was the last sentence in paragraph 1, right?
I don't have my notes.
Then don't go today.
Tomorrow.
And I used my phone as like note cards because I did like speaker notes in.
We'll put that actually at the bottom.
Are we taking notes on it? On each presentation?
You're taking that one significant note.
How do you know which one it is?
The one that's the test question.
Well, how do we know what the test question is?
They're gonna tell you.
Sure, they'll tell you.
They're telling us.
The test question is not meant to be a trick. You are free to say, "This is my test question," and then show it. Or let everyone know what your test question is. That's fine. I don't want anybody tricked. Okay?
Someone think I literally. I'm gonna make another.
One other thing. As always, you are invited to speak your mind 3 times or write 6 times or whatever that combination is. That's part of the requirement. So after we learn about, say, Social Security, reasons why it should be kept the way it is versus reasons why we should privatize it, I invite you to think about it. What do you think about Social Security? Or whatever the issue is. Okay? So having said all that, is there a volunteer? You're all going. Eventually. Because if there's no volunteer, then the mighty pencil drops randomly on someone I really want to go today. But remember, it's random. Is there a volunteer? All right, here we go. Will. It landed on your name, Will. It was amazing. Well, you're glad you went there. So glad. What is your topic?
Is democracy a good thing? How did he do it? Oh, right there. There we go.
Which one was that?
Is democracy a god?
Can you oh, you made your own.
Yeah, but like when you want to go to the slides, you press that.
Is it not working?
So right here.
Oh, okay.
Present, and then it goes here.
And you hit present, right?
Yeah, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do a good thing, but it didn't work out.
All right. Hold on. I also have Mr. Stopwatch here. It's a minimum 3 minutes.
Let me just collect my thoughts for a second.
Perfect. My five. Yeah, because you said 3 to 5. Okay.
Okay, I got this.
3 to 5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The same mind.
Are you ready?
I believe so.
Go.
Is democracy a good thing? Death by mediocrity. So, as we all know in our daily lives, we've been taught that democracy, that republics, that elective assemblies are the best way to rule our nation, and elected leaders have been very good for us. You look at two very famous elected leaders here, Winston Churchill and FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. These two were very good leaders that were elected in democracy. In general, democracies are stable, fairly representative, less tyrannical, and more free and open than any other type of government, just by the very nature of them taking their power from the people instead of like the top. They're bottom up instead of top down. So from that very nature, as you can see, the separation of powers is very hard for one person to gain power and become tyrannical. It can happen, however, if you look at these two. These two were both elected leaders that were elected by their people and turned out to be horrible dictators. Vladimir Putin is technically a president, but he's been ruling for 25 years now and is in all but name a dictator. And then you had Hitler, who was openly a dictator and was elected by the people of Germany and then seized power through the government, through the weak Weimar system, and was able to become a dictator. And these two have both caused terrible suffering on their own people and the people and the nations around them. Democracies, they're not all good. They are slow. Like you look at our nation today, it's deadlocked. There's congressional deadlock. There's not very much that happens anymore. A lot of the problems that we have as a nation are sitting unfixed because of what democracies are. They're by design slow. They are by design hard to get things done, because if they are easy to get things done, it's easier to become tyrannical. But it also has the other added disadvantage of becoming much worse at doing anything else. And they encourage mediocrity. As Lawrence J. Peter, he was a professor at the University of California, and then he was he called himself a hierarchologist, which was like he basically just studied government and bureaucracies basically and how they worked. And he said that bureaucracy defends the status quo long after the quo has lost its status. And democracies are bureaucracies. They're top down. They have a leader, and then they have subs, and then they have more and more and more down until this. And so what he said, what he thought, was that basically in a democracy, in any sort of business or whatever, you have really good people who are good at their job, and they get promoted to a job that they're not good at anymore. So they get promoted to their highest level of mediocrity, which is why almost everything that we have as a nation is kind of like the government has been characterized as being slow and bad at its job. And that is why. They're inefficient. They encourage corruption through the things called PACs, super PACs, which are basically groups of businesses in one sector, whether it be like the NRA or whether it be other sectors like clothing, that basically pay. What?
You've reached your 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
You're doing great.
They basically pay politicians to vote for laws that would benefit them. Some of them, they're all bad. Not all PACs are bad. There are PACs that encourage freedom of the press and stuff like that, but there are PACs that also encourage less strict trade laws so they can accrue more money, or weaker taxes on the rich, stuff like that. And they also encourage stasis, so it's hard to get things done. What about autocracy? Autocracy is basically one-man rule, or the rule of very powerful central government who they have a lot of power over their nation. We have been taught in our lives that dictatorship, that monarchy are automatically bad, that they encourage bad things. But these are four very famous and also very good leaders. Left to right, this is Otto von Bismarck, Marcus Aurelius, Douglas MacArthur, and Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Bismarck was the Chancellor of Germany. before in like the 1800s. So he was the one who basically spearheaded the unification of Germany, and he was not an elected leader. Before him, Germany was a collection of very small states. Prussia, Brandenburg. Is that 5 minutes?
You're 1 minute left.
Okay. That is basically, he united Germany. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor, one of the last good 5 emperors, what they call him. And he expanded Rome's borders to the farthest extent they ever were. Douglas MacArthur was not a formal dictator in a way, but he basically ruled Japan after World War II for 6 years and brought Japan into the modern world and got them out of their phase of like suicide bombing is cool. And then Mustafa Kemal Ataturk united Turkey. And you look at its benefits. Autocracy is strong, it's efficient, it's powerful, it's organized, and it gets stuff done. So in times of crisis, oftentimes like after Turkey, after the fall of the Ottomans or the Roman Empire, they were autocracy, an empire, and Ataturk was a dictator, and they brought together their states. And then, but it isn't without its weaknesses, of course. You get horrible dictators like Kim Jong-un, Mao Zedong, and Joseph Stalin, who were very bad to their people. So in conclusion, basically all I'm saying is that democracy is good in many ways. It is good for people, it is good for representation, but sometimes in times of crisis, and especially in our day of congressional deadlock, sometimes more powerful rule is not always a bad thing.
I want to praise Will. That was brilliant, right? I mean, he hardly looked at any notes at all. I think that thing in his hand was just a comfort zone because I don't remember seeing you look at it really at all.
No, I just used it before.
Knew what he was talking about, presented it with passion. I mean, he was looking at you the whole time, me half the time. Really, really impressive. The only poll is, I don't know what your question is.
Oh, is democracy a good thing?
Well, I mean, I don't know what your test question is.
Sorry.
Which is fine.
You didn't tell me that until after.
I know.
That part.
So if you go today, you are forgiven if you don't have it. Just let us know tomorrow.
I'll say it right now. I
Okay,
have thought of one. My test question is:
just make sure you write it down.
What is a weakness of democracy?
Okay, before you leave them on their own, why don't you take a minute here and suggest what answer you might be looking for?
From this. Okay, from this side, one of them. These are the weaknesses of democracy.
Yeah.
Slow, bureaucratized. They encourage mediocrity. They're inefficient. They encourage corruption, and they encourage stasis.
Just write that question down with the answer.
Like, you want me to give it to you? Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Will. Nice job. So now let's just take a minute or two. He tried to basically convince you that democracy is not always a good thing, that sometimes dictatorship is the good thing and that democracy is the bad thing. Any thoughts on this? You're required to speak 3 times total or write down 6 times or whatever combination. Any thoughts on this before we move on? What you think? Is he right?
I agree with a lot of things. Good.
She just said, I agree with a lot of his points, and I'm glad she said that, but I'm not giving you credit for that. It has to be a point that has some meat to it.
I know.
Will, you don't count. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's just about the society and the culture of the people being not together.
Yeah.
I don't think it's entirely, because maybe your America, yes, democracy is great, but for other people, I don't think that's the same.
Pretty interesting because what you were saying, what she just verbalized there is exactly, almost word for word, the U.S. said when not allowing the Philippines to become an independent nation. Basically, we said to the people of the Philippines, oh, no, you're not ready. You're not ready. You don't know how this works. We'll help you. Hey, we'll help you set up institutions, and then we'll let you go. And we ruled the Philippines for about 50 years. From 1898 to about 1946, the U.S. was the colonial ruler of the Philippines because they weren't ready. And then we let them go. Any other thoughts? Now that's a meaty statement. I like that one.
I think like democracy.
Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I'm chewing on it. Like democracy can be really good, but it also depends on the people, like what works and what doesn't. Because if you're gonna propose like a dictator over a country with a lot of free voices and a lot of opinions, but you're also going to have one ruler, you're just gonna have people unforced, you're gonna have rebellions, you're gonna have lots of bad things if the people do not like their ruler or going to verbalize it. I mean, I think it's true in democracies too.
Okay, it looks like we're ready for our second presentation of the day. Man, we're gonna get like 4 or 5 in here, which is awesome. Is there a volunteer? You'll be everyone's best friend if you have the guts to volunteer. They will love you. If not, the mighty pencil drops randomly.
Is it actually going to be randomly though?
Actually, this time it'll be random.
Yeah, are you saying?
If, by the way, I land on your name and you're not ready, just tell me that you're not ready. Okay.
We're not ready.
But don't say you're not ready just because you don't want to go. You have to go eventually. Why not get it done? Okay. Here it goes.
Compared to Will's, I think you need to add a lot.
It's dropping. Emily Lutz.
She's not here.
Who said that?
I'll go after
Why don't you just go now?
Because I was trying to figure out when the question was.
Oh, she's not here. All right, you're up.
All right.
Yeah. So you can sign him out, or if you're on Classroom, just again, nice job, Will. Very good. For one.
In the bathroom.
Okay. Jeez.
It's fine.
Eminent domain. So it's you and someone, right? Who?
Oh.
Were you doing this one right here?
Yeah.
Or wasn't it you and a partner? You just went on your own? No. All right. No problem. Okay. So she has the topic eminent domain. Allow me to inform you of what it is. It's when the government confiscates your private property because of some common good. A school, a road, something like that. But what if the government confiscated your private property because they needed a new Walmart there? It's happened. That's the issue being debated. Okay? Whenever you're ready, my friend.
All right. So I'm sure. Okay. So eminent domain can be a good thing. However, I feel like the goodness in it has been abused by the government, and they've really just overused their power. Okay. This house here, it was subject to a lot of controversy. It's titled in a lot of, I guess, papers and like documents, the Little Pink House. And this was the subject of a Supreme Court case called Kelo versus New London. They wanted to take this house down to build a, I think like a drug corporation, like a Walgreens essentially. And the lady here, she fought for years, I believe. Like she just fought to keep her own house. It says right there, it's not for sale. I'm not going to let you have my house. And she said, quote, although I love my little pink house, as has come to be known, buildings can be replaced with the knowledge that the government can take away something so valuable, so essential as a belief that we are all entitled to life as we choose to live it, and the pursuit of happiness as we choose to define it is much more disturbing. Some of my neighbors, already in their 90s, lost the only homes they ever knew, where they raised their families, celebrated their holidays, carried on their traditions. Some are forced into nursing homes, and some died waiting to see whether they would be allowed to stay in their homes. Now, the government, in this case, they only saw the opportunity to make more money. They did not see the pain of human suffering. They chose not to see that these people were fighting essentially for their own lives, their own well-being, their own happiness. And then later on, it's in the same court case, she said, the government may use eminent domain to condemn private homes and transfer the land to private developers. That was the judgment ruled over the case, Kelo versus New London. That was what they decided. That was what the court said. And it was determined that the city of New London, Connecticut, acted within the power of both the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution and the state constitution after it had seized and bulldozed 90 acres adjacent to the drug giant Pittsburgh Incorporated to complement its pharmaceutical research. Pfizer?
Yeah, it's a huge company.
To complement its pharmaceutical research center. And to make this worse, a few years later, I couldn't ever find the date, they just tore everything down. There was just an empty lot. And those who argue for eminent domain, they say, yeah, it makes attractives more, it makes neighborhoods more attractive. It makes them look better. How is an empty lot making anything look better?
So you're telling me that Pfizer never ended up building anything on the lot?
They built stuff there, but then a few years later, they decided to move, I think, Georgia. They decided to, we're just going to up and move, and they bulldozed everything, and then they just left it as a vacant lot. There we go. The government is abusing the right to eminent domain by taking private properties, and in some cases, a lot of cases, people's homes, only convert it to a different form of private property, like businesses. And that's essentially what this comic is saying, that this family or this developer is asking this family to sell, and they say no thank you, and then they're just taking the house anyways. They're abusing their right. They are overusing it. They are taking it. They are just controlling people's lives over eminent domain. And they keep just pushing and pushing on residents until they give up or die. And they refuse to take no for an answer. And to make matters worse, the developers are working with the government officials. They just don't stop. They take and they take. And they bulldozed 3 ranch-sized homes to build this privately owned house. That's just a replica of the White House. Inside and out, it's a replica of the White House, but it's privately owned. The guy that built it doesn't even live there anymore. He has other houses. He doesn't even use the house. He just took 3 homes, destroyed them, and built a house that he doesn't use.
You're saying that the 3 homes were taken away against the wishes of the owners.
I'm not sure on that, but they were bulldozed over for this privately owned.
Okay, but did they sell their house? Or did they, against their wishes?
I never found that information.
Oh, all right. So I'm going to pause here for a second. You're doing a great job. You're going to get full credit. But one of the things we have to be careful of is she just presented this information. Yeah, they bulldozed 3 houses to make that one house. And what she just asked you to do is assume eminent domain. And then I asked, well, wait a minute, did they sell their house willingly? And she didn't know the answer. It might not be eminent domain. This might just be a case where 3 people sold their house. So that guy built a McMansion there.
Yeah.
We don't know if this fits in with their topic, although you're doing great. Keep going.
And when the stock market crashed in 2008, the bank tried to close his house twice. They tried to foreclose it twice. And then the guy, the owner, he found ways around it. And then eventually he put it on the market for $11 million. And then he almost sold it for around $2 million. A quote from this website called World Trippers. They're teamed up with MathQuest. It said, the Atlanta White House couldn't sell, and in 2011, it was nearly foreclosed on before being sold for around $2 million. For reference, the original asking price was $11 million.
You have about 15 seconds left.
Okay. So this cartoon here, it says that it's essentially a happy family, and then the developer just comes along and says, I see this house here, and I want it, so I'm going to buy it. The guy is going to ask the family about it. They're not going to ask them. He's already making plans. He already knows what he wants to do with the land. And that's going to force this family to move out. They're just going to force them to leave. They're never going to want to come back because they have to fight. If they have to fight for their own house, they have to fight for their neighborhood. What's the point? They're just going to go on to a place where they don't have to fight, and they're not going to turn back. And
Wrap up.
and this is an example. This guy, he was super excited that there's going to be a new sporting stadium by his house, like right next to his house. And then he discovered, oh, joy to me, the sporting stadium is going to be right where my house is. And I believe he fought against it after he found out, because he was in full support of it. And then, oh, shoot, it's my house. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he didn't want to give up his house, and he had to. And you can see that it's getting bulldozed right before their eyes. And they're not going to want to go back to that. So, yeah.
Very good. All right.
And I don't have a question yet. I'll come up with it.
Have any of you ever heard of this phrase called NIMBY? 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 Not in my backyard. Oh, I'm all for a new sports complex, but not in my backyard. Oh, yeah, we need a new prison, but not in my backyard. Boy, do we need schools, but not here. Put them over there. NIMBY, right? She showed us a great example of NIMBY. It'd be nice if the other eminent domain presentation arguing in favor of, she was clearly against. Was there a presentation in favor of?
No.
Yeah, there were.
I wouldn't.
Zach.
No, I'm pretty sure that those two both like, because Zach got
Okay, fine.
and then Ethan chose it.
Okay, fine. Are you ready? Zach? You wanna go?
Wait, did she say her question?
She's not ready,
I
which
didn't
is fine.
have one.
I have something to ask her.
Okay. I will call on you, I promise. Was there any other evidence? I see like 4 names here. Okay, now, go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I looked into this photo, but I didn't see who took it. I think it was this Alice Seed guy.
That dude does not look like he's actually standing there.
Yeah, it looks Photoshop.
Yeah.
There's like white.
There's like a white right next to
Maybe.
it.
That was my first time.
Let's do this, Will, though. I'm gonna just challenge you and let back a little bit if you don't mind. Let's say it is Photoshop. So what?
I guess, but
I mean,
also,
How does it defeat the argument?
I would hesitate to use that one because the dude didn't care until it directly affected him.
Right. So the status of NIMBY. Okay. I don't want to present what I consider to be valid counter arguments until we've heard everyone talk about eminent domain. So I will be saying this: you eminent domain people, you're next tomorrow. Okay, so let's have it done so we can have an intelligent discussion.
They're not gonna be against
I don't care. No, that's fine. She's arguing against eminent domain, so are they. That's fine. All right, we'll shut her down for today. Thank you.
That was not my first.
Both of you did a really good job.
I used to not mind presentations, but all of a sudden this year I'm not a fan. Yeah, but I no, I just brought.
Any notes that you took? Any comments? I'll take.
It's a lovely store.
What is your
Judge
judge?
Yes and no. No, you don't need to. I say, hey, this man scammed me out of a court.
Yeah, here's legal document.